Today's episode is sponsored by Wall Street Oasis. On this show, we talk a lot about the specific skills you'll need to demonstrate as an investment banker. But are you concerned about what your specific chances are at landing an offer? Be sure to check out the WSO Academy, a highly selective 12-week training program that can help you get the job. You'll get one-on-one mock interviews with investment bankers, courses, resume reviews, and an accountability system to keep you on track. Again, this program is highly selective, so spots will open up over time, but check out the link in the show notes and make sure you join the waitlist. You don't have to go it alone when recruiting. WSO Academy can provide the resources you need, so check them out today. It's Super Day season. I want to talk to you today about some critical mistakes that some candidates make when they're doing investment banking interviews, specifically in how they answer questions. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can avoid those kind of mistakes and make sure you perform at your best during your interviews, especially your super days. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. This is the only show dedicated to helping you learn both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process. My name is Alex Mason, and I am your host. I'm a second-year MBA student here at Cornell, just wrapping up this season now of helping our first years with their recruiting process. And it's really, really exciting. I just heard about some people accepting some offers today. So that's really thrilling. And actually even heard of one of you guys, one of the listeners, reaching out to me today, letting me know that you just accepted your offer. So congratulations. And it's just a really exciting season in the investment banking recruiting world because a lot of people are finally realizing those goals of getting their offer. Now, I want to talk to you today about interviews. Because we're in this interview season, there are 3 fatal mistakes that I have seen and actually made myself in investment banking interviews in terms of how I answer questions. So let's go ahead and talk about it right now. Okay, the first thing is not trying or under-sharing. Now, it's really easy to come into an interview situation and feel this sense of intimidation, feel this sense of nervousness, feel like maybe you're going to get something wrong or not knowing enough. And so sometimes an interviewer will ask a question and then the candidate will respond with just a very quick answer, not really go into a lot of detail, and then just be quiet. And then there's this awkward silence in the room because the interviewer is kind of waiting to see, are they going to say more? And then they, at some point, just move on to the next question. You don't really want that because what that signals to the interviewer is that you're not very confident in the answer you gave. Now, there are, of course, exceptions to this. If you get a yes or no question, obviously you're just going to answer yes or no and keep things going. If there is a need for explanation, then definitely explain it. But one of my mistakes early in my career, back when I was working as an engineer, is I would be very shy and be very nervous going into these interviews. And sometimes I would just kind of want it to be over. Like I just didn't want to be in that situation of having people stare at me sometimes on a panel and kind of quizzing me with questions. And so I just wanted to get through it. And so I would just give relatively quick answers, hoping that it was the correct answer so that we could just move on to the next one. And remember that this typically comes from a place of fear and interviewers can sense that. So you don't want to undershare. They only know what you tell them. There's a lot of amazing things inside of your head, things that you've studied, things that you've practiced, all of your personal experiences, your life experiences, your professional stories and experiences. If you do not share them verbally with the interviewer, they will not know. So you have to make sure you don't make that mistake of undersharing. Okay, mistake number 2, you could probably guess it's the opposite of undersharing. It's oversharing. There are some people who get very nervous in investment banking interviews and interviews in general. And so what do? They talk. They share so much. And there's some risk with this. You think when you're doing this that you're being very thorough, that you're covering all of your bases, that you're making sure that you're demonstrating to the interviewers that you're extremely competent. And in some cases that can work. But in other cases, it can backfire against you because when you talk a lot, there's a couple of risks. One, you risk saying something that's actually incorrect. The more things that you share, the higher the chances are that something that you say might be kind of off or maybe really off. And then that gives the interviewer an excuse to pause and say, wait a minute, what did you say back there? I don't think that's right. So that's one risk. Another risk is that you could potentially go off on tangents and actually not even answer the question that was originally asked. So be careful with this. And it's very easy to speed up your pace when you're nervous and you're sitting there. Some people do this very naturally. They talk very fast. Remember, slow it down to a pace that matches the pace of the interviewer and make sure that you're clearly communicating what the answer to the question is and don't overshare. Okay, so number 3 is having a generic scripted response. Now, there's some amazing candidates out there pursuing investment banking jobs who they don't undershare, they don't overshare, they share very good responses in terms of amount of content, their pacing is good, but they're giving very generic answers. If your answer sounds like it came straight out of Breaking into Wall Street guide to investment banking or some other source, like, for example, Cornell, our MBA program, we have a proprietary curriculum for our MBA students. Like, if it sounds like it came straight out of a book, then that's not good. That sounds like you just memorized some stuff. And then the interviewer might question you and say, okay, yeah, they're right, but do they really understand it? It sounds like they might actually have just memorized this and they kind of sound a little bit robotic. That can be an impression that some interviewers have. So there's some nuances here, and I want to talk about this for a minute because it's important. If the question you're getting in an interview is quantitative in nature, this is when you can and should be more objective and to the point. So for example, if you're getting an accounting question, for example, the classic $10 depreciation question, yeah, you want to walk through those 3 financial statements back to back and just go through the numbers. Just boom, 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 boom. Affects net income, cash flow of operations, your assets, balance sheet balances, boom. And that's it. That is a situation where you want to be pretty generic because, I mean, that is the answer. Like, it's just numbers, it's accounting rules. You're just following the formula. You're demonstrating conceptual knowledge. You're demonstrating numerical skills just by doing that. So that's fine. But the thing is, if you get into some other types of questions and you try to go with a generic response, it doesn't work out so well. This is particularly true with behavioral questions or even technical questions that are of a conceptual nature and have more nuance. So let's say you're describing a DCF, like walk me through a DCF. There is a standard way to approach that question. But if you just list off a bunch of things really quickly, back to back to back in a very generic way, the interviewer might say, okay, yeah, that's right. But this is really like, there's a lot of concepts within that answer. So they may drill down deeper. So don't be surprised if that happens. The general rule of thumb that I've come up with is the more open-ended the interview question, the more you want to be specific in your response and really personalize it. So if someone asks you about your greatest strength, if you just say, I'm incredibly analytical and I know how to process numbers, great. So do you and probably every other person who's applying for this job. What you can do to differentiate yourself, if that truly is your strength, is make it more personal. My greatest strength is being analytical, and that's demonstrated by a project that I worked on in my last job where I had to analyze 10,000 rows of data. We only had 2 hours to do it. I used a couple of Excel formulas to simplify the process, blah, 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 blah. And then we achieved the result because of my actions. Boom. It's like your classic story type of response. You're still giving the same outcome at the end of it, but you're making it much more about you and what you did as opposed to just naming a character trait or a skill and moving on. So this is really the one that I'm harping on, spending the most time on here today, because this is the one that I see people have problems with the most. Is they do all the research and they study, but if you don't come up with more specific way of delivering the message that's personal to you, it doesn't really demonstrate that you understand yourself or understand the concept that's being asked about. So avoid generic scripted responses, and you can combat this by doing things like telling stories. And also what you can do as a solution to avoid these three mistakes is to practice repetition, of course, but aside from the quantity of your practice, increase the quality of your practice by practicing your verbalization. Practice talking it out. That is the gold standard for many interview questions, really, because that is the mode with which you will be tested by the people interviewing you. You're going to be sitting in a room, staring at someone across the table, having a conversation. So if you could practice with a friend, practice with a group of friends who are also recruiting with you, that is an excellent way to practice these things. Practice verbalizing the answers. Use your own words to describe the same concepts. Have your friend describe it in a different way. That kind of practice increases understanding for both of you. So that's what I would do. And frankly, that's one of the reasons I started this show, was to help myself verbalize the concepts that I was learning to make sure that I actually understood them, as opposed to just reading something in a textbook and saying to myself, okay, I get it, move on. Test your understanding. Test your understanding. And that will really help you when you get into the interview so that you can actually deliver what you need to deliver in a clear and concise way. Okay, so big mistakes: undersharing, oversharing, generic scripted responses. You can avoid all those things by being clear and concise, personalizing your answers, particularly for more open-ended questions, specifically behaviorals or more conceptual, technical questions. And yeah, that's it. Focus on communication and connecting. So that's what I got for you today here on Investment Banking Insights, and I'm so thrilled that you're here. Thank you for following the show. The show is continuing to grow. We're here at the end of 2024 recording this, and if you're not already, follow the show on YouTube. The YouTube is rocking and rolling right now, and it's just really cool to see the numbers grow every day. I mean, it's still far, far dwarfed by the size of the podcast audience, but I'm really excited to interact with you on YouTube as well. So go ahead, leave a comment if you want to interact with me there, and I'll see you next time.